In this week's parasha Vayishlach, there's a very powerful Dvar Torah from Rabbi Sachs, alav shalom. On this week's parasha, I actually said it over a couple of years ago, but I wanted to re-record it in light of what's going on here in Israel. It's a very difficult Dvar Torah about the rape of Dinah and what takes place afterwards, how her father, how her brothers deal with the violence that took place against her. So we said it over a couple of years ago because I think it's a very powerful message. But what's going on right now in Israel, after these terrible atrocities that Hamas committed against our people with the rape that took place for our women and the murder. And I know the murder and the death was what was focused on at the very beginning of this war. But now, 50 plus days later, beginning to reveal what took place when it came to the area of rape. And it's just a terrible, terrible stuff that happened. And I think that the Dvar Torah that Rabbi Sachs says it was very poignant back then. I think it's even more applicable to today. Actually, the truth of the matter is that he writes at the end of the Dvar Torah on the website. They quote the old Torah. They write that the original Dvar Torah was written in 2014 when we were in a different war against Hamas in the summertime when a lot of rockets were being shot against us. It was a difficult war. We were fighting back big time, and a lot of destruction took place in Gaza back then too. But I think that was what happened right now. It actually is even more applicable to what's happening right now. Okay, so let's talk about the story in general, and then we want to say over Rabbi Sachs's chidush. Okay. So the parasha speaks about Vatitzeh Dinah bat Leah. Dinah went out with the Bnot Haaretz, with the women of the land. The Jewish people had just traveled. Yaakov and his family had just traveled. They were just finished the whole Esav story. And now he goes and settles in the area next to Shechem. And now Dinah went out at night one night, and she went out to go see what was going on with the daughters of the land, what's happening out in town. There's a little bit of a critique from Chazal on this, but we're not going to go in that direction right now. But then comes along, and there was a guy named Shechem ben Hamor. So the name of the city is Shechem, but also there was a guy named Shechem ben Hamor, Achibi Nesi Aretz. The head, the president, the head, the chief of that section of Shechem was known as Hamor, and his son, who's named after the area of the country Shechem, his son Shechem goes out and he sees her and he takes her, and he takes her and he disgraces her and he violates her in this terrible act of violence against Dinah. But then it goes on, if that wasn't bad enough, Shechem kind of gets totally infatuated with her, and he's so drawn to her, but he can't get away from her. He really now wants to be with her forever. He wants to marry her, and he goes to his father. He goes, Abba, he goes to Hamor, we got to do something. I really want her to be my Isha. I really want her to be my wife. Okay. In the meantime, Yaakov heard what happened. Yaakov heard that Dinah had become defiled. But then the pasuk tells us, but his sons, all of Dinah's brothers, they were busy in the field. They were working. So it says, "V'harish Yaakov ad Boam," and Yaakov was silent and he waited until the sons came back, until Dinah's brothers came back. And in the meantime, Hamor, the chieftain, comes with Shechem. They want to try to speak to Yaakov. And when Bnei Yaakov, when Dinah's brothers, when Yaakov's sons heard what happens, they got so upset. And Vayichar lahem ma'od, they were very distressed, they were very angry. Ki nevela asa b'Yisrael, because this is a terrible outrage, it's a terrible abomination that took place to the Jewish people. Okay. But Hamor comes to speak to them, and he says, "Oh, my son, he longs for your daughter. Maybe we can make some kind of deal. Maybe we can all marry each other. Let's become one larger clan." We spoke a couple of years ago in the Dvar Torah that Esav really quickly married into the people of the land, and that's how he grew so quickly and became into these great chieftains, because he just married out, assimilated out. And we see that throughout the stories over here in Bereshit, there's a question of who do we join with, who do we not join with, who do we bring in, who do we not bring in. So Shechem says, you know what? You have a bunch of strong young men over here. We have a bunch of women. We have a bunch of ladies over here in Shechem. Why don't we marry your daughters, marry our sons will marry your daughters. Let's all marry in and let's become one big happy family. Okay, ignoring what took place until now. Now the psukim come along and say that the Bnei Yaakov, they respond to Shechem b'mirma. They respond to him with guile, with trickery, and they say to him, okay, if you want to marry into us, but you should know something, that we are circumcised people, and you guys are not circumcised people, and it's like an embarrassment. It's a herpa. It's a real embarrassment for us to marry anybody who's uncircumcised. So if you want to join us, you have to take all of your men, and you have to circumcise all your men. And the crazy thing happens, and you want to see the desire of Shechem. He convinces his father to speak to all the people, and they convince all the men to go through a circumcision, which on the surface sounds like, it's going to be some kind of conversion process so that we can become one big happy family. But then after really they all do it, all the men circumcise themselves. Day number 3 comes by, which is the most painful day after circumcision for all these older men. Comes along 2 of Yaakov's sons, Shimon and Levi, and it says over the pasuk, Achei Dinah, they are the brothers of Dinah, and they come with their sword and they massacre all the men in the city. And they kill Chamor, they kill Shechem, his son, they just kill the people, they pull Dinah out from her hostage situation, and they leave. And then it says the rest of the sons then go in and start plundering and slaying everybody and really destroy the city completely. They then come back to Yaakov, and Yaakov gets upset. And he says, how could you do this? How could you bring this trouble upon us? How could you do this to the inhabitants? Like, well, you just killed them all. We are so few in number. They're going to unite against us, and they're going to attack us. How could you do this? We're all going to be destroyed. How could you do this? And he starts yelling and screaming. He gives real musar to Shimon and Levi, and then they respond to him. Vayomeru hachazona yaset achotenu. Can our sister be treated like a prostitute, like a whore? Can that really happen? That's how they respond. They said, and then the story stops. It ends right there. And so who was right? Were the brothers right? Was Yaakov right? And truthfully, at the end of Yaakov's life, he's going to give Musar one last time to Shimon and Levi because of what they did. But if you look at the story and you freeze frame the end of the story by us, it's not clear who is right and who is wrong. And here's where Rabbi Sachs comes in and gives an unbelievable chidush. He says, if you look at the commentators are actually split. The last word in the story goes to Shimon and Levi. But we see that the Abba, the father, is the one who is giving them rebuke. But we also saw that Yaakov took a step back, waited for his sons to come back. So it's, in a certain sense, it was having them be the ones that are really in charge. We also see that ultimately there was no attack. And Yaakov's fear that everyone would destroy the Jewish people, that didn't happen. They destroyed these evil people and they survived it. So what's the halakha? Were they right? Who was right? Who was wrong? So he brings down Rabbi Sachs that if you open up the earlier commentators, the Rishonim, so the Rambam comes along, Maimonides, and he says, wait a second. Of course, because the question is, how could you destroy a whole city because of the actions of 1 or 2 people? So he explains, no. This city was a corrupt society. We have a halakha. Even the non-Jews in the 7 Noahide laws, they have a law to set up a court system, to set up dinim in your town to make sure that the evil doesn't take place. And when an evil like this takes place, where a daughter of Israel is raped and taken captive, this is against the Noahide laws. It's against sexual immorality, and it's against the court system. So if you have a whole society that goes along with what they're doing, that society is considered to be corrupt, and they get the same judgment as the actual perpetrators. So according to the Rambam, this was 100% justified. They had it coming to them, and that's how halakha works. Now, Rabbi Sachs has a side point over here. He says, unbelievably, we also see from this Rambam that this concept of where does collective punishment come from? It comes from an idea we have in Judaism, koisel aravim zeh bazeh, that every Jewish people is responsible for everybody else. So we are responsible for how our brothers act, and we will be held responsible when our brothers act incorrectly. So from the Rambam, it sounds like this is not just a Jewish principle. This applies to non-Jewish societies as well, which is really an unbelievable chidush. That's saying by non-Jews as well, you have to set up a proper society. You have to be responsible for your community. You have to be responsible for your country. And if you, as a political leadership, as a legal leadership, as the police system, if you aren't holding yourself up to the right standard, then your society now becomes responsible. It's not just a Jewish concept; it applies to non-Jewish societies. Now, there's arguers and there's those Rishonim that argue on the Rambam. Nachmanides, with Moshe ben Nachman, the Ramban, he argues on the Rambam and he says, no. By non-Jewish societies, we don't have this rule, collective responsibility to be responsible for each other. That's not part of it. You have to set up a court system in Noahide laws. You have to punish and prosecute those that do wrong. But to say that they're responsible for each other to the level that Jews are responsible for each other, Ramban says no. And then he saw other commentators come along and say also, it looks like they're trying to convert also. They're doing circumcision. They're taking steps closer. And he says, he brings down that this debate continues until the modern day Bible scholars, modern day Chachamim today, modern day Parshanim, they also debate back and forth who was responsible, who was not responsible. Is the whole city responsible? Is it not? This is the debated until today how to understand this. Says Rabbi Sachs. But if you look at the actual Torah, what does God say? He says, if you look closely, it's not clear. And says Rabbi Sachs, that's done on purpose. Hashem specifically made it unclear. Because on the one hand, we have Yaakov's argument, is there collective punishment? What are the repercussions of this? Can we just go and do this act? And then you have the brothers who say, what do you mean? How do we not respond to violence? Our sister was just violated. How do we not fight back? How do we just let this happen? This could happen again. Much worse could happen. How do we not fight back? You can't not fight back. Says Rabbi Sachs, this is the result of violence. This is the result of terrible. When you have the terrible act of Shechem, so now there's nothing we can do. There's no possible response that's not going to have some negative to it. And this is the complexity. This is the grayness of life. You don't have perfect solutions. When somebody else starts the violence, there has to be a response. But whatever response you do, there's going to be some loss along the way. And but that's life. That's the reality of life. That's the grayness of life. And, we're watching, could relate a little bit to today's time. Everyone's debating in the news, this side, that side. Rabbi Sachs is saying by this story, once somebody else starts the violence, you have to respond, but realize that any response you do will be lacking. Shabbat Shalom.